And we continue at 1:05 in the afternoon on the John Phillips Show. Mr. Randy Wings in Culver City.
John, the future is coming to California airports as San Jose announced that Waymo is coming to the San Jose airport. Daniel Lurie announced that Waymo is coming to SFO, and LAX still sucks.
How can we not get Waymos to LAX?
We're behind the times on everything.
No kidding.
And by the way,
and now we have to take an additional shuttle to get an Uber.
Yeah, that's a real nightmare. You know, they already have the Waymos operating at Phoenix Sky Harbor. So Phoenix, SFO, and San Jose all beating out what's supposed to be the biggest airport on the West Coast.
Well, it's certainly on brand. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. It is our pleasure to welcome our next guest to the program. He is a retired deputy chief of the San Francisco Police Department, Peter Walsh. Welcome.
Thank you, John. I appreciate you having me on.
Well, thanks so much for stopping by, and I'm sure that after a career spent in law enforcement in San Francisco, you got some stories to tell.
I have a lot of stories to tell, and they're all intertwined from the Bay Area to LA to Sacramento, not just in law enforcement, but how things are done to make law enforcement act.
Well, I'll tell you, it's very difficult. I guess I can relate a little bit because I was a conservative on CNN. And when you work for an organization where they fundamentally don't want you to do your job, it puts you in a very strange place. And my family was in business with Daryl Gates's family for many years here in Southern California. And when Daryl Gates was chief of the LAPD, things were different, where people wanted law and order. They wanted the cops to know that the city had their back. And people, generally speaking, wanted public safety. They wanted to feel safe in their communities. They wanted to make sure their local stores didn't get robbed. And now so many of these big cities in particular, the suburbs, it's not quite as bad. But in the big cities, the council in particular, and in some cases the mayor, like in Los Angeles, they fundamentally don't want the cops to do their job. And I don't see how that works.
Yeah, it's a tough thing, but I'd like to say, you know, in my tenure, even all the way up as deputy chief, the men and women in law enforcement do want to do their job and continually go out to do their. There's this kind of curtain behind them, though, that people don't realize of certain laws being passed. You know, everybody's familiar with Prop 47, but Prop 47's benefits never materialized. And what winds up happening is you allow people to use, you know, narcotics. Well, how do you continue to use narcotics if you're not functional? And then we get back into crime. And then the crimes that we have, if you steal less than, you know, $950, you get a citation, and we hope you show up to court in 30 to 45 days.
Yeah, it's a backward system, and it leads to the shampoo being locked up behind bulletproof glass at the Rite Aid. That's a result.
It is. And, you know, it also there's a lot of talk about, and I see it up here in San Francisco, about why security guards aren't taking action. Well, you know, that puts a whole other amount of risk. Now you're you know, fighting with somebody over shampoo. And as much as we'd all, you know, like to see some resistance to it, the dangers in it are just overwhelming because, as you see, it's usually not just one person anymore. It's organized and definitely, you know, almost a criminal syndicate.
Do you see fentanyl as being a game changer?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I worked in the Tenderloin as a lieutenant, and we had problems, no doubt about it. And I never had to deal with fentanyl as a street officer, and meeting the cops in the Tenderloin and the Mission and different areas, it is absolutely decimating, like, a population of people. It is just abhorrent, and it leads to all sorts of other issues, such as our mental health issues, our homeless issues. It's all tied in, and I think you see that area growing because of fentanyl. And obviously, the deaths are horrific. I mean, if you add those in as murders, I think every city, every county would probably be off the charts on a homicide rate.
One of the things that big city mayors are doing right now, London Breed was the queen of this, but others are doing the same thing. Barbara Lee over in Oakland, Sheng Tao before her. They don't want uniformed police officers responding to certain things. They want to send social workers. They want to send safety ambassadors. They want to take certain vehicular issues away from the cops and give it to the Department of Transportation so that way bureaucrats are responding to incidents instead of uniformed officers. And I thought to myself, how dumb are you where you want to take away these potentially dangerous situations away from the people who have the proper training and give it to people who don't have the proper training, and you're sending them in there like lambs sent to be slaughtered. And you're doing it, I'm sure, because of the anti-police sentiment that exists in many of these councils, particularly post-George Floyd. And what you end up with is you end up with a city where the city can't conduct its business, where you can't enforce laws, you can't make sure that dangerous situations are diffused, that people who are experiencing some kind of crisis are given the help that they need. If someone's breaking the law, that they go to jail. They are purposely gumming up the system so that the desired result doesn't happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and to point that out, the best models ever for, a mental health response that even San Francisco looked into and we really wanted were from other areas where it was a dual response, right? Okay, let's have somebody who does deal with mental health crisis, but right there is a, specially trained officer who can help. And we didn't have that in San Francisco. We did go to a crisis intervention training, which is really a team model, but we're not working with crisis counselors. We're still doing the same thing. When we do hand these types of issues off to third parties or other agencies, like Department of Public Works, when they have to go to a encampment, well, guess who's there? The police. We don't take the lead, but we're there because we know that something may happen. So you might put somebody in the lead, but they know that somebody is behind them. And you can look at the simplest crimes in San Francisco. We used to be able to cite vendors for, illegally selling food and things like that. That went to the Department of Public Health. Well, those groups start getting assaulted or intimidated, and guess what? They will not go out without police protection. And then we're figuring out how we can ratio a number of officers with them. And in times where you don't have enough officers in the first place, it's another stress on the department, but at the same time, it's something that needs to be done. So it was an unusual, or at least a not well thought out plan.
We're speaking with Peter Walsh, who's a retired deputy chief of the San Francisco Police Department. Peter, when you were working for the city, Gavin Newsom was mayor during part of that time. Gavin Newsom, of course, is now governor of California and looks in the mirror and sees a president of the United States. According to recent polls, he is the front runner right now in the Democratic primary for president in 2028. As someone who has worked with Gavin Newsom through the years and certainly knows him better than the people voting in Iowa, New Hampshire, and South Carolina, do you think Gavin Newsom could become president someday, or do you think that his faults and his Achilles heels, of which he has many, will prevent him from getting there?
I think that he is very driven. I think he has an enormous amount of financial support around him, and he is one of the few nationally known governors at this point. And I think we've all seen that he's continuing to be on that national level, trying to engage in conversations over social media, et cetera. I think, as you mentioned, that people in Iowa and other places don't know him. And I think as that becomes more apparent, that's where you're going to start seeing maybe some of the more moderate or, voters on the Democratic side and even non-party affiliations really start taking a hard look. Because what do you fall back on when people don't know you? Well, let me go see what he's done. And California, I love this state. I'm born and raised in San Francisco. Is not where I grew up and is not in the direction I think that most people want to go, whether it's financial, in criminal justice, et cetera. So I think it's going to be a tough road to hoe for him.
What kind of guy was he when you would interact with him? And I asked that question because I asked that question to people in the state legislature, to people who cover state politics. And many of them, most of them, in fact, have virtually no relationship with him at all. They had a relationship with Arnold. They had a relationship with Jerry Brown. They knew Gray Davis. He came from the legislature. Most of them up there don't have the type of relationship with him where they can go grab a drink or go grab a Starbucks or have lunch or just chit chat with him about whatever subject it is that they care about. He sees himself as being above them, and they can talk to his staff, maybe, is the attitude that he has in Sacramento. When he was on the Board of Supervisors in San Francisco, when he was mayor of San Francisco, he didn't have that ability quite yet, I would assume, that he has right now when he looks in the mirror and sees a president. What kind of guy was he when you would deal with him?
So when he first came on the supervisors, he was actually very approachable, very neighborhoody. He represented kind of the northern part of San Francisco, the Marina, Cow Hollow, et cetera. He would go to one of his establishments, and you could go and sit and talk to him. I was the interim head of his detail, his protective detail. In my interactions with him, and he started running for governor the first time before he moved to lieutenant governor. Number one, I always had to have a professional relationship with him, and I'm going to juxtapose him to other major political figures that I've gotten to meet over the times in my professional. He would not very often say your name. He did not ever have a personal conversation. And that's not just with me. That's with people who had longer tenures on his detail. And it's kind of something unique. And just to swing it back to what I was going to say about I have been with presidents. I was in the dignitary protection section of the police department. I was with presidents, kings. Nancy Pelosi was one of the most gracious person that we ever protected. We had a lot to do after September 11th because of continuity of government. So there was a very human bond between people who were protecting, regardless of party, regardless of anything, because we took that as a profession, but it was always nice to just say hello. It really took him moving on and leaving us as governor when Jen Siebel, who was very nice, actually got him to throw a party for his protective detail and some of the people he worked with at one of his establishments before he left.
I would imagine that people like Willie Brown were great to work with because that guy is a backslapper. That guy has amazing stories. That guy is just fun to be around.
Yeah, I had limited time with Willie Brown. I did have a few good occasions because I was in the same unit, but I wasn't on the mayor's detail at that point. Everybody loved working with him. There was a few people who still worked with him. They knew, though, that there was a professional line that, hey, this is what we do. We don't talk about what we do with the mayor, but he was gracious, would say hello, and he was very professional towards his team. I'll even say Ed Lee was very, very loved, who passed away while he was mayor, by a lot of his team. Just how are you? How's the family? And that's all we want as professionals, and we know there has to be a line. So I really want to make that important. We're not supposed to be your friends, but there is a human connection to everybody you deal with, and especially people who are supposed to get you out of situations that may be extremely dangerous or harmful. So there's definitely a difference in how he interacted with us versus some of the other city officials and even state and national level officials.
Based on your time with him, how smart do you think Gavin Newsom is? Did he come across as being a tactician or someone who was there because he liked being in the spotlight and that was the motivator, not the vocation of politics?
I do think he's smart in a regard that he is, and you've heard the term thrown out for years, he's a policy wonk. But policy is something that you sit and mull over and talk to experts and figure out what you want to do because you have a goal. And maybe your goal is very admirable, but at the same time, smart people actually engage the people the policy is going to affect. It doesn't come down from the top. And so one of the things that I think you see is he's really well rehearsed on numbers and facts. And by the time you get to look it back up, the interview's over, the discussion's over, and you could have done follow-up questions, or whoever's interviewing him could have. So I think he's really good at being a rehearsed politician who is smart. But it will be interesting to see when he gets into, and I think we're seeing it with him trying to bridge these gaps on unfiltered podcasts and things like that. There's a little bit more dancing going on, and the answers aren't as flowing. So can he learn how to do that? Maybe. I'm not sure. But I wouldn't discount him as not being smart. I would just say he's very well rehearsed and read.
To that point, when he first started introducing himself to the entire country, he tried to frame himself as the Democrat who could talk to MAGA, as the Democrat who could win those 7 swing states that Kamala lost. And he had Charlie Kirk on the podcast. He had Michael Savage. He had Stephen Bannon and others. And the reaction he got from the Democratic base was negative. And then he just switched on a dime, and now he is the number one MAGA hater in the nation. And he's very snippy on social media. He's swearing all of the time. He wants you to know that he hates Republicans more than any Democrat on planet Earth. Are either one of those presentations authentically him?
I don't think he actually hates people. I think what you have to go back to is that you have to be a tactician to win the nomination. And right now, there is no reaching over the aisle and trying to get things done. You could co-opt a lot of things with the fires and say you're getting things done. And I've, buried my differences in order to, rebuild, to move things faster, et cetera. So I think the main concern in any candidate's mind, and especially his, is that I have to win the Democrat nomination. And are there going to be people tacking left of me? And if you look at New York, if that's the bellwether coming, that a governor who's on shaky ground to run for governor has to endorse a New York City mayor who is admittedly socialist, that's a big say. And he might be gauging that I have to keep my distance. And he's thinking maybe he's not going to tack too far left, that he, can at least feint right. I don't know. It seems like an impossible position to me in his messaging.
In private, when you would see him interacting with other politicians, which politician was he genuinely warmest to? Was it Willie? Was it Nancy Pelosi, Jerry Brown? Who was it?
Honestly, those were mostly in very public settings. So he was always gracious and always laudable. I never really saw him privately other than, and again, I would still even consider this public. I got to go to a lot of major fundraisers where people pay a lot of money, and you could see the interaction. He's going around the room, but this is an audience, right, that is going to see mostly someone else, a presidential candidate or a vice presidential candidate a few times. And so his way about him is more in that gregarious political sense, as opposed to I'm having dinner with a friend who happens to be, Nancy Pelosi or Willie Brown, et cetera.
Peter Walsh, retired deputy chief of the San Francisco Police Department. Thank you so much for stopping by today. Fascinating stuff.
Thank you, John.
If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, now that we've passed the halfway point of today's show, if you want to continue listening to us after we sign off at 3, that's easy to do.
Absolutely.
All you got to do is search for The John Phillips Show wherever you get your podcast.
And he said absolutely.
Whether it's the Apple Podcast app, iHeart, Spotify, search for The John Phillips Show, hit subscribe. You can download all the episodes.
Absolutely.
You can do a Google on the YouTube. You get the free KABC app, the free KSFO app, the KMJ Now app for our show on Saturdays at 2.
Absolutely.
There are so many different ways to listen to this podcast and this show and download all the episodes.
How are you?
Absolutely good.
Love to shake your hand.
Yes, it's been amazing.
I was just kind of inspired to do that. No real reason why.
And on Friday, Randy, we're going to the San Fernando Valley.
Which means I don't have to leave the valley to come here. That's the best news of all. Plus, we get to see all of y'all because we're going to be doing a live show at the Pineapple Hill Saloon in Sherman Oaks this Friday from noon to 3. It's a live broadcast of the John Phillips Show. That place has great food, great drinks, and a beautiful outdoor patio. We'll have special guests like Susan Shelley from the Howard Jarvis Taxpayer Association. The courts have made it easier to raise your taxes, so come by and sign the petition to save Prop 13. It's the John Phillips Show live in Sherman Oaks at the Pineapple Hill this Friday from noon to 3.
Let's go to John in Long Beach. John, hello.
Gentlemen, good afternoon. I just have a couple comments. The first one, the people in the laundry room at the apartment there, they were just, doing what the manager asked them to do. They were out there in the back in the vacant lot, and the manager said, "Hey, why don't you people get a room?" So they did. They chose the laundry room. Well, I couldn't help myself. And also the parking situation in San Diego, I spend a lot of time there. And they not only they charge now at Mission Bay, Balboa Park, around downtown, and they have something called surge parking. So as usage goes up and there's events, they jack the price up even higher. And even the people that do work there at Petco and in the gas lamp, they have to pay those high fees too. So
wait a minute. Now, I got a question.
I'm not too happy about that.
I need a little clarification on that. In regard to surge pricing, does that mean if the Padres are having a home game, a home baseball game, and they're playing the Dodgers, it's one price, but if they're playing my Angels, it's a reduced price?
Well, hopefully. I don't know about that.
All right. Thank you for the call. All right, Randy, it's time to open up the California Crime Blotter.
If the cashier is dummy.
Questions?
And the first edition is an Ed Lascos edition.
It's been a while.
And it's on, like Donkey Kong.
But when you have a story that involves brawl at the Benihana, who else are you going to get to cover that story?
How crazy is that?
The one and only.
Get your hibachis out, people. It's time for an Ed Lascos classic.
Well, from flying shrimp to flying fists.
Even Marla's getting in on the fun.
You're supposed to catch the shrimp with your mouth.
Well, from flying shrimp to flying fists. Chaos erupts at a Benihana restaurant in Torrance. A fight between an employee and a security guard was all caught on camera.
Wait, it was the employee? You got to be careful. Those guys have very sharp knives.
Oh, yeah. I would try to de-escalate fast if I pissed off the chef.
A fight between an employee and a security guard was all caught on camera, turning dinner into a very dramatic scene.
You don't want him flinging that fried rice in your face. That stuff's hot.
Could burn.
Let's go live to Fox 11's Ed Lascos with more of this wild video. Ed?
Yeah, Marla, you're right about that. Everything was flying here, even plates at the height of a fight, not between diners, but you had a worker fighting with the manager, and then the security guards get involved. Mikey, take us right into it. It goes down there, that Benihana's wild scene. You come here, you know you're going to get good food. If you sit at the hibachi table, you know you're going to get a show, but you never would imagine a show like this. Watch.
They got pay-per-view.
And not WWE. This is MMA.
A wild scene inside this Benihana restaurant.
People went in there just thinking that they were going to see when they turned the onion into a volcano. And then this happened.
It really is the same act every time, isn't it?
But it's always fun.
Oh, I enjoy it, and I like the way it tastes, too.
Although if you go to the Encino one for the lunch special, you can tell that they're checked out.
They're just going through the motions.
Not only the guy behind the hibachi, but the people at Encino that go there for lunch.
Yeah, well, I can tell you this. If I go to one of those hibachi spots, I need my chef to be engaged because I would look real stupid with Lucille Ball eyebrows.
Where the hibachi table isn't the hottest item, it's a worker fighting it out with security guards. Throwing a plate, the diners duck for cover. It's a smackdown. Not
It really is dinner and a show.
They should think again. Throwing a plate, the diners duck for cover. It's a smackdown, not in the ring, but right here.
Look, Ed Lascos is a terrific reporter, but he really shines the brightest when he is narrating fight videos.
And when I picture a plate being thrown at a brawl at a Benihana's, I picture it looking like one of those ninja stars.
Throwing a plate, the diners duck for cover. It's a smackdown, not in the ring, but right here in the middle of this crowded restaurant. Diners jump up from their tables, some running for the exit, babies crying as chaos.
Wait, who's bringing their baby to a Benihana?
Well, there's not supposed to be bedlam going on.
That's an expensive meal to bring a baby to.
You just keep the baby in the stroller. The baby's not eating hibachi.
You're saying that they don't fling a shrimp into the crib?
I would hope not.
As chaos is the special of the night here.
Oh, you can hear the baby crying. It sounds like an LA City Council meeting.
No, it's not quite as chaotic as that.
It all goes down at this Benihana's on Hawthorne Boulevard, just across from the Del Amo Fashion Square Mall.
Let's go with me!
Whoa.
At what point do you reevaluate your behavior? And it doesn't even matter how in the right you are. If you're a grown man, if you're an adult, and you're involved in a multi-person brawl at a Benihana's, you've made some wrong choices in your life.
Let's go with me!
I'm sure they'll listen to that.
Torrance police now confirm an altercation between a manager at the restaurant and an employee. Security guards rush in, helping that manager escort the worker outside, and that is when it is on. It's on big time.
On like Donkey Kong.
And it's on like Donkey Kong.
That was at a restaurant at Beverly Hills. So what do you do if you're the manager? Do you have to refund every meal now?
I think you see if Red Lobster's hiring.
A plate flying through the air. They're shoving back and forth. They're yelling. The guards count them. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 guards just to get this guy outside. Finally, he leaves. He walks out.
Wait, how much security does this Benihana have?
Okay, if you are operating a high-priced restaurant, and I know it's not as high-priced as you can get, but we're not talking about fast food here. You need that much muscle at a Benihana's?
Well, it's next to the Del Amo Mall, and that has become bedlam.
Well, it's not Spirit Airlines, though.
What are you going to do when they go out of business and you can't make those jokes anymore?
Well, it's going to turn into Frontier. You watch.
He's wanted now for a charge of assault. Police say one of the guards hurt, hit in the face by a piece of that plate as it shatters.
That can be really dangerous.
Imagine showing up to the ER. What happened to you? I was injured in a brawl at the Benihana.
You were stabbed by what, a knife? Fine china.
A few diners reacting. They're surprised, they tell me, saying it's the very last thing you'd ever expect here at Benihana. The restaurant with its slogan, it's not just a meal, it's an experience.
Well, this was an experience.
They were not lying.
It really is.
This man is a treasure, and this is why you watch the local news. Sometimes you need to laugh.
It really is. It sure is. How crazy is that? Now back out here live. Torrance police investigating all of this. They want to talk to that worker, possibly a charge of assault. The only one in...
Possibly.
If you throw a plate at someone's head, that's assault.
The only one injured here, unbelievably so, is the guard. He gets cut on his face. And Marla, think about that. That restaurant is packed. You have children there. You have families there. Hibachi tables are busy, and nobody.
By the way, they must be doing well for a Monday night to be that packed.
Oh, yeah.
And nobody hurt with the plates flying and the chaos that's going on around them.
Yeah, it's the last thing you expect. You just want to have a nice night out. Monday night, kick off the week, and you end up in the middle of all that chaos. Well, thank goodness no one was hurt.
I sincerely hope that we find out more about this story. I have to know what set this guy off.
Benihana's, brought to you by Carnival Cruise Lines. If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, you're monitoring the mailbag.
Greg writes in at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. Guys, this is the same Benihana we frequent, and once saw an employee walking out as we walked in, throwing off his apron and cursing the manager as he quit. I thought I was in Torrance, but maybe I was transported to Oakland. Oh my God, they melted the hibachi table.
Oh my God, they melted the basketball court.
Coming up after the news at 2, we're going to check in with Donna Kaufman, who is a true crime reporter extraordinaire. She is going to analyze the text message exchange between the alleged shooter of Charlie Kirk and the transgendered spouse. All that coming up in just a few minutes. Let's go to Ellie in Whittier. Ellie, hello.
Hey, it sounds like that might have been a Benihana's after parent-teacher night, and one of the parents wore a MAGA hat.
Could be.
Turn into a brawl.
Yeah, I'm a teacher, and I was happy to hear on the podcast all the calls in. And, it's an hour and a time when most teachers are working. So, there was a lot of callers who were grandparents and parents. But the teachers who called in, too, I want to spread the word. Like, you got to get out of the union. You got to use your Janus rights. And there's 2 organizations that help with that. And it's the Christian Educators, and if you're not a Christian, there's also American Educators Association. And you can have those like leaders on the show, and they can put the word out for that too, because they just have to get out. The union does not do anything. In fact, it makes it worse, and it's really upsetting. I've been through some really awful stuff lately. It's just, I'm not the kind to keep my mouth shut like a lot of people, which I understand why they do that, but I, myself, they know how I feel about things, so I get targeted, and it's really frustrating.
And
so
the volume got turned up after Charlie Kirk was murdered?
Oh, yeah. I was getting personal texts and had to block people at work, and yesterday I got called out in front of a meeting of, the students and everybody. There was 160 students, and the counselor says, well, I know not all the educators here make undocumented students feel safe, and it doesn't feel safe. And I'm sitting here thinking, just because I mentioned that it might not be right to kill somebody, it's so flipped, and it's so insane. And I know that there's lots of parents and students who are sympathetic, and they tend to always take the attitude like I do, okay, they're having their, temper tantrum and they're going to calm down, but they don't, and it continues on. I teach high school, so it's usually the English teachers, and it's usually the history teachers, and then now they have these ethnic study courses like the one teacher mentioned. Anybody teaching that is absolutely going to be way off their rocker, so it doesn't stop. So it gets to a point where you think of legal action, but that they have all these protections. So enrollment is the thing that affects them. And that's such a huge change for families. I'm a parent myself. Nobody wants to pull their kid out of school because it's such a huge change for the kids, such a huge change for everybody else, and all because of one teacher, and they have 4 or 5 other good teachers, and they've got a whole family. But, 30 students is one teacher. And if they lose, 30, 60, 70 students at a school, they've got to cut 2 or 3 teachers. And they don't care all the complaints in the world that you make about one teacher who's tenured until they have to start cutting teachers. So I think the grandparents and parents and, the support system out there, it's got to reach a point where you're willing to, make some major life changes to fix this. I was encouraging my own son's teacher because he came home and he told me, I had been very upset about it. And he said, yeah, our teacher was talking to us about it, and she said, I don't want to get bad phone calls from parents. So I turned right around and emailed her and told her, hey, thank you for bringing that up. Thank you for supporting that. And she was so thankful because she's in the same situation I am. She doesn't know what she's going to hear from anybody. And the good teachers need to hear the encouragement too, because it is, it gets really lonely out there. There are a lot of really good, math and science teachers who are just trying to do their job too. And, the kids feel like they have to just soldier through and put up with this in their English classes and their history classes and whatever. And then they're left with, this continued behavior that just continually is enabled because everybody wants to put up with their tantrums all the time.
And I would imagine that they don't believe they're being political. They believe that they're just being human. Oh. But if you disagree with them, then you're the one that's bringing politics up.
Exactly. And that was why I was so ridiculously frustrated. I just try to get through a lesson, and it's never enough for some of them because you even admit, okay, well, there are some systemic in it, and who voted for that, and which party has caused these problems, and how did we get in this situation? And after 30 minutes of that, you're like, this is only a 50-minute period. Can we back off a little bit? I'm just trying to teach them how to do a resume. So it literally is. It's and if you happen to be a person of color and and I'm like, maybe you should just fix your grammar there. You don't care. And then you're told you're dismissive and you're hypocritical. And, it's a religious zealotry like no other. It's insane. And it's so hard.
If they're spending their time doing that, as you mentioned, whatever subject it is they're supposed to be teaching, that just gets ignored.
Oh, yeah. And that's why I said it's always the English teachers and sometimes the history teachers. Because, they're in math, they're in science. Occasionally that's a really weird case. And I don't know what's going on with the young ones. I do try to keep an eye on, my kindergartner and my first grader. I mean, they can only tell you so much about what's going on when they come home. But, it's the staff meetings. That's the other thing. I thought that Benihana's might sound like a staff meeting. It was so uncomfortable Monday because I chose to send an email to the staff that said, hey, I don't think it's right to kill people. Let's just try to encourage our students that violence is not the answer, which in any other context would have been totally fine to send. But it was like a bomb went off because of what had happened that day. And then the staff meeting Monday, everybody's just staring at me sideways like I'm the Gestapo in the room. It's really frustrating.
I don't know how you fix that, because if you're a certain age and you cannot say that killing someone because they disagree with you politically is wrong, I don't think that there's anything you can do to change their mind at this point.
No, and that's part of what I had mentioned. I mean, it's not like I'm trying to change their mind, but that's why it comes to an issue of enrollment. And I understand why, because you usually don't lose 1% to 2% of students over the course of a year.
All right, we're out of time. We got to run, but thanks for the call. I appreciate it. We've got one more hour coming up on the John Phillips Show. Don't you go anywhere.